So today we're going to take a look at this team quiz here. So the first part, you were asked to identify amplitude, period, and phase shift. So amplitude would be 3. Our period, 2 pi divided by our b value. And our b value would be right here. So we have 2 pi divided by 4, which is pi over 2. Our phase shift, c over b. So our c value right here at the end, so we have pi over 2 divided by 4, and again dividing fractions, pi over 2 times 1/4. So we have pi over 8. In the direction it's plus, so that would be to the left. And our vertical shift, it just happens to be at the beginning here, but that's up 2. So this next one, our amplitude was 2. Period, again 2 pi divided by b, and our b value, how many x's are there? There's just 1, so 2 pi divided by 1 is 2 pi. Phase shift, c over b, so that would be pi over 1, or pi, it's a minus sign, so pi to the right, and there would be no vertical shift. The third one here, amplitude would be half. Period, 2 pi over b, 2 pi over 2, which is pi. Phase shift, and this one's tricky. A lot of people think it's 4 over 2, but there's no parentheses, so there's no phase shift. This minus 4 at the end, that moves the whole graph down 4. And this last one here, so our amplitude is 4. I'm going to do vertical shift would be up 3. Period, 2 pi over 1, which is 2 pi. And then we have, let's see, pi over 1, that's c over b value, which would be pi, and we would be moving to the right. So now when we graph it, when it says 1 positive and 1 negative, we just need 4 marks on each side. So a complete wave on each side. So first thing I notice is this d value is 1, so I'm going to label the midline as 1. And then let's see, our amplitude is 3. So above 3, that would be 4. 1 minus 3 would be negative 2. So our period, 2 pi over 2. So that means this is pi. So this first mark is divided by 4, so 1 pi over 4. 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4. But I noticed 2 pi over 4, that can be reduced down. So let's call that pi over 2. But this has a phase shift. So our phase shift would be pi over 2 divided by 2. So that's pi over 2 times 1 over 2. So we have pi over 4 minus to the right. So sine normally starts here, but we got to shift it to the right, so it's going to start here, and then it goes up, so down, up, and we have our graph there. So 1 negative period. So let's see, here's our d value right there. Well, I should put the 4 marks on each side. So there's our midline. Our amplitude is 2. So 2 above would be 0, below would be negative 4. Our period, 2 pi divided by 1, which would be 2 pi. So we have 2 pi. So 2 pi divided by 4, so we have pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2. Cosine starts high, so oops, and that would be high, my bad. And we have our cosine graph. So if we take a look at the next page again, 4 marks on each side. Our midline is 1. Our amplitude is 2, so this would be 3 and negative 1. Our period, 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2. And this is kind of the tricky one. So to get our first tick mark, we take pi over 2 and divide it by 4. So pi over 2 times 1/4. So we have 1 pi over 8, 2 pi over 8, which is pi over 4, 3 pi over 8. There isn't a phase shift, so sine starts in the center, but that negative there, so it's going to go down first. So our next one's pretty easy. It's just a cosine graph, but it's negative. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 0, 1, -1. So our period, 2 pi over 1, which is 2 pi. We should be pretty good at those 2 pi ones. So 2 pi, let's see, half is pi, pi over 2, and 3 pi over 2. It's cosine. Cosine starts high, but since it's negative, it would start low. So the next verify one. So we got to rewrite this. So secant is 1 over the cosine of x. Cotangent, cosine x over sine of x. Cosecant, 1 over the sine of x. So algebraically, we can reduce out the cosines. So we have 1 over the sine of x equals 1 over the sine of x. And we've proved it's true. So number 10, cotangent. Cosine x over sine of x plus sine of x over cosine of x equals 1 over the cosine of x times 1 over the sine of x. So we could fraction bust this, multiply by sine x, cosine x. So when we distribute here sine, so this is cosine squared of x. Distribute it here, so that would be plus sine squared of x equals 1. Well, this is the Pythagorean identity, so we're done. So the next one, we're asked to write a cosine that has an amplitude of 4, period of 4/5, vertical shift of down 3, and a phase shift of 2. So we'll start at y equals 4 the cosine. We know there's some parentheses there, and we know it is down 3. So let's start with this period. Period equals 2 pi over b. We have right here our period is 4 pi. So 4 pi equals 2 pi over b multiplied by b. So 4 pi b equals 2 pi. Divide by 4 pi. So b equals 1/2. So we can put that we have our half x. And then our phase shift. So let's try what is our phase shift. Equals c over b. So we know phase shift is 2. C over 1/2. So if we multiply by half, half times 2 equals c. So c equals 1, and it's to the right, so it has to be -1. And these last couple, hopefully these are starting to get pretty easy. Sine of 7 pi over 6. So 7 times 30 is 210. Opposite 30, -1/2, -√3 over 2. Sine is our y, so our answer is -1/2. Secant, that's the reciprocal of the cosine. So pi over 3, 180 divided by 3. So 4 times 60. So we have 240. So let's see, this would be 60 negative root 3 over 2. So that's negative half. So this is our cosine, but we need the reciprocal of it. So that would be negative 2. And the last one, the cotangent. So this is 3 times 90. So that's right here, 0, negative 1. But what is cotangent? So let's draw a triangle. So we have x, y, and 1. Tangent, TOA, y over x. So that means cotangent is x over y. So x, 0 over negative 1, well, that's equal to 0.